Hello and welcome to Hard Copy from our channel's television studios in Abuja. I am Kayla Magwa. It was supposed to be a simple speech, a keynote address delivered by Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President and Chairman of the Boards of Directors of the African Development Bank Group, on the 20th anniversary dinner of Chapel Hill, Denham, a speech titled Reimagining Nigeria by 2050. The brouhaha started when he said these words during the speech, quote, "What is especially worrying is that Nigeria is retrogressing, as its wealth per capita declined since independence when it was $1,847. If we're to look into the future, 25 years, then let's look back into each of the 25 years since independence. By 1985, 25 years after its independence, Nigeria's GDP per capita declined to $868. By 2010, the GDP per capita grew to $2,120. But by 2024, GDP per capita had plummeted to $824, the lowest since independence. So essentially, Nigerians were much better off at independence than they are today," end quote. He went on to explain factors responsible for this problem and proffered solutions. Well, the presidency did not take this lying down at all. Presidential spokesperson Bayo Onanuga dismissed Dr. Adesina's claims as incorrect and not based on actual facts, adding that GDP per capita alone is, quote, "a poor tool for assessing living standards as it masks crucial economic factors like wealth distribution, informal economic activities, and access to public services. No objective observer," he says, "can claim that Nigeria has not made progress since 1960. Today, as we await the MBS's recalibration of our GDP, we can comfortably say without contradiction that it is at least 50 times, if not 100 times more than it was at independence," end quote. Well, today on the program, another presidential spokesperson is here. And this one is an economist who will be breaking down Nigeria's economy in the 2 years of President Tinubu in office, Mr. Tope Fasua. Long gone from his days of wanting to be president of Nigeria under the abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, Mr. Fasua serves as a special advisor to President Tinubu on economic affairs and went viral recently for stating that many Nigerians do not understand the term multi-dimensional poverty and insists that Nigerians cut their coats according to their cloth. $1, that's 1,500 approximately, he says, can buy you bole and fish in Gwarimpa. Yes, our naira may be weak against the dollar, but it still has value in local context. What meal can you get for $1 in America, he says? Well, those are some of the things that we'll be talking about today on the program. Dr. Tope Fasua, welcome to Hard Copy.
Thank you very much.
So let's get the drama out of the way. Dr. Akinwumi Adesina,
exactly. Yeah,
was he wrong, first of all?
He was actually
totally wrong.
But first of all, let me say that you two, you were wrong in inferring to me what I didn't say.
Okay.
In the 1,500 naira saga, I didn't say Nigerians should go and cut their coat according to their size.
Cloth.
Or coat or cloth according to their size. The time for that is gone. We're not asking Nigerians to tighten their belts or, we can't speak rudely to Nigerians at all, willy-nilly, because we're all Nigerians. We're all in this together. Everybody knows what's going on. Even though, first of all, the cost of living crisis was a global issue at some points after COVID. In fact, up to yesterday, I was here listening to one American explaining how the COVID effect has caused so much problems, even up till now. It's what it is around the world, But what we're just making the point that, there's an advantage Nigeria enjoys. That's it. I think in that interview with Sheung, he was saying something about $2.50 a day. I said, look, there's an advantage Nigeria enjoys. $1 is still valuable here when even a beggar in the US may throw $1 back at you. I said, what do you want me to do with this?
So how was I wrong in what I said? Because that was exactly what you said now.
Nobody said, I never said that
You said you can get 1,000 naira, 1,500 naira, and that was the point.
That's a fact. That's actually a fact.
Yes, but you said
But nobody said Nigerians should go and eat 1,500.
No, we didn't say that you said
nobody
Nigerians
said,
should go and eat it.
Nobody
we said
also
that you said that you can afford bole of 1,500.
Exactly, even less. Even Chicken Republic sells food in free advert actually. Sells food of 1,500. Another one, Chow Deck, advertises right now in Abuja 1,000 naira, but nobody said that because there's a clear difference, and that is what ticks people off. And we don't want to tick people off. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you live through it. A lot of people called me, a lot of people sent texts, some people pitied me, and luckily, in fact, there were also the people who actually went out to show that it was possible, and they sent me the video, they posted the video as well, that if it was about 1,500, there's a lot you can do in our country still. It's our luck, it's our advantage, which I think we should maximize. Well, not take it for granted. Don't take it for granted that, it's going to continue like that. Don't take it for granted that that's what people should do, but understand that it's an advantage. It's called purchasing power parity. It's an economic term. It's very long and winding. It's a bit ambiguous, but purchasing power parity just says, okay, you know what? In the US now, if you want to compare what people earn, you say, how much do you buy one Big Mac from McDonald's? But in Nigeria, it's not the standard thing we eat. I don't know whether you had Mac this afternoon. There's no McDonald's in Nigeria anyway. So where the PPP breaks down is where you start to compare the things that people eat or people buy abroad compared to what they buy here. Sometimes it can be different. Oh, yes. So anyway, but the advantage must be recognized that indeed, $1 in the US is not $1 in Nigeria. $1 in Nigeria can do a lot. What you do with $1 in Nigeria, you probably need $10 to do it in the US.
Let's go back to Dr. Akinwumi Adesina.
So Adesina
How was he wrong?
It was just simply wrong because in the year 1960, when we got independent, our GDP, gross GDP was basically about $4.2 billion. Now, $4.2 billion, and the population then was about 45.1 million people. Meaning that if you divide 4.2 by 45.1, you land at $93. So the GDP at that time was $93. Where he found 1,840, I don't know, because calibrate it anyhow you want. Even go back and say, oh, $93 today, how much was it the worth? The value in 1960, it still came to about $800 or 800 and something dollars. You know what I'm saying? So the 1,800 was over the top. Maybe somebody wrote the thing for him. We know him to be a very smart person, but on that very score. And again, I think it also brings out the issue that, look, we are tired and sick and tired of all of this bad news about Nigeria. The policies of government are, of course, what we have done in terms of the reform are very foundational. Look, how can we fix the foundation of this economy so that we can grow? And, those reforms must not derail because we must get to that point where everybody will prosper. Almost everybody, because there are people who choose not to prosper.
So he gave some causes.
So
he said weak economy, because it wasn't just that line. It was a whole thing. He took his time. That's Dr.
Yes. He was wrong on that. He was wrong on that.
But he went on to talk about causes
on
and
that
solutions.
GDP per capita. Yeah.
Causes: weak economic governance, poor fiscal discipline, politicization of economic growth, limited industrial manufacturing, among other issues. These are the issues, aren't they, in your view?
Yeah, some of them are okay, I would accept. The only problem is that in these political times, when a man at that level makes such a statement, people just say, oh, it's the current government. He could have qualified it that, look, over the years, this is what we have seen. Over decades, some of them, and maybe there are times when you don't have a good leader. There are times when you have good leaders. There are times when you have strong leaders. There are times when you have weak leaders. He didn't mention that. If he did in the entire speech. This was a whole speech. It was a keynote address. And he mentioned that he talked about the situation over the years and what happened over the years. Fair enough. So then when you talk about over the years, then you say, okay, when you talk about bad leadership and this and that, people just generally want to say, okay, look, the guy is talking about the current government. They start to look at the present government. However, it could be that you have a good leader now, you had a weak leader before. Someone like Tinubu, everybody knows that President Tinubu is a strong leader. But there are some solutions that the Tinubu administration tell me about it.
that he preferred. Universal access to electricity.
Okay.
Better infrastructure.
Everybody talks about electricity.
We've always talked about
electricity in this country.
Okay. Boosting the manufacturing sector, because we have said, and we've heard other economists like yourself have said over the years, if you do not have if we are not producing, you're wasting your time.
Which is
So
part
he said
of the
boosting
reason,
the
part of what
manufacturing
government
sector.
is trying to do.
But
now.
how do you feel about these suggestions? Aren't they the same suggestions that the Nigerian people have been calling for?
Everybody has written about those suggestions one way or the other. Talk about electricity, production, productivity, industrial development, and so on. Look at what's going on in the US now. Mr. Trump came and said, you know what, I'm going to put trade tariffs on everybody because my country is dying. Because indeed the US is going down. If you went to some of those states in Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, South Carolina, in Louisiana, you see poverty that's worse than most places in Nigeria.
True.
And the man understands the former coal cities that are now dead, the highways that nobody passes anymore.
But President Tinubu is kind of doing the same thing.
So that's what
that's
what leaders do. Let me land on this because you asked me a question. So he sees that kind of thing. So he decides that, look, I need to bring action back to those places. I need to give jobs to those people who are wasting in those areas. So the same way he comes to Nigeria. So he's saying that, look, how do we bring productivity back to Nigeria? How do we bring industries and manufacturing back to Nigeria when they were there before? If we had enough time, I'll tell you the history of industrial development in this country. The first part, the second one, when all of them collapsed and the old warehouses became churches and so on and so forth. Now there seems to be a bit of a comeback. Some of them may not be Nigerian-driven, but there are also Nigerians that are very strong. People talk as if, it's easy. It's not easy to run an industry, to run a company, a manufacturing, producing company from morning till night. It's not. It's
especially
one of the
when you
most
don't have
difficult
electricity.
things. It's not only
especially
electricity.
When we hear the Minister of Power talking about how they are going to be removing more. I want to be able to talk about that. Really.
Well, yeah, maybe you ask the Minister of Power to explain himself on that.
It's not just about him, really.
I don't have to explain what he said yesterday.
It's not about him.
I'm sure he will come out and still explain
it's not just about him.
But
it's also an accusation that has been given to the Tinubu administration, and we're going to answer that before we go on the break. Now, the Tinubu administration has been accused really of operating some kind of policy that it's one of those policies, and I think I'm not an economist, but I think in 300 level at some point in school I did some electives in that department where they talked about economies that are basically based on market forces, no subsidies. That the Tinubu administration is directly moving towards that, removing subsidies and insisting that market forces deal with themselves. And I remember that when we were in school, we were taught about this Keynesian theory. I think you know. So the Keynesian theory basically, because the argument is, let the market forces fight themselves. In time, everybody will find their level. And what the Keynesian theory has been saying, when it's time.
No, he said that in the long run.
In the long run. When is the long run?
Yeah.
Exactly. You understand? So that's what the question, and it does feel like that's what the Nigerian people are asking when it comes to what we're dealing with right now. So sure, we understand that these subsidies were unrealistic in the explanation they've given. We were not living a real economy. We were basically living a lie, so to speak. Okay, take out the subsidies. Let's know where we are. In the long run, we will all balance out. When is the long run? So many people have accused the Tinubu administration of operating this, I think it's called an open market policy. I can't remember what it's called.
Free market.
A free market policy.
But how is
that supposed to work?
Nigeria is not operating a fully free market economy. Well, there may be a tendency towards that. We are also doing economies of common sense. The problem with electricity and petrol, these are the two subsidies that we're talking about, and petrol, electricity. For example, water is subsidized in this country. If you get the water that the government sends out. Agriculture is still subsidized in this country. They give out, free fertilizer, free seedings, every year. But you see these two, the reason why, no, indeed I agree with you, but the reason why we can't continue to subsidize this, partly because of all of the frauds that have happened in the past. And the fact that, look, for example, a refinery is not it's not a company that you would ask a civil servant to be running. A civil servant cannot run a refinery. You know what I'm saying? A civil servant cannot even run electricity because they are commercial businesses that, for something that needs to be working constantly and there's no holiday, there can't be a strike. You can't say, the union say we should strike today, we're not doing anymore.
We do have to go on a short break, but when we come back, we'll be talking more about some of the things that the Tinubu administration have done in the past 2 years as they reach the middle of their first term in office. So please stay with us on Hard Copy. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Hard Copy. If you just joined us, we have Dr. Tope Fasua, Special Advisor to the President on all things economics. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right. Let's talk about the 2 years of the Tinubu administration. Give me a top five. A top five that the Nigerian people who are listening right now will say, yes, 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 this has happened. And this was good for us. Economic-wise, from the economy.
From the economy, there are so many anyway, but, so that I don't sound too over the top, for example, we have a scenario where part of the repositioning of the economy, Nigeria's trade balances, Nigeria trade surplus hit $16 billion. Is incredible, even for just 2024 alone, the repositioning of the petroleum sector. So we talk about trade balance 16 billion. Our balance of payment itself, which is the global balance sheet figure of how is Nigeria doing, trade, transfers, all of that, 6 billion surplus is incredible. Of course, the central bank moved the reserves, the unencumbered reserve from 3 billion to 23 billion. These are numbers that I'll be showing, and of course, because of that, the Fitch Ratings Agency have had to upgrade Nigeria to be from where it was before, and then, so there's so many things going on. That's just as regards by the repositioning of the petroleum sector alone, the fact that Mr. President said, what, subsidy is gone, and everybody had to align. What has happened is a total repositioning of that sector. Nigeria is now a net exporter of sometimes refined fuel, refined jet fuel. We have sent products to US, we have sent products to Saudi Arabia, which are very sophisticated countries in terms of production. That whole sector has been transformed. More than 200,000 people have found jobs in that sector, directly and indirectly. And apart from that, what is very, very incredible that has happened, part of it is that our states have repaid, in 2024 alone, Nigerian states repaid 32% of their global debt. Is unprecedented. And why were they able to do that? Because the reforms in the petroleum sector, which has, removed the idea of subsidy being paid to faceless people every time. Sometimes, 7 trillion naira has been paid this year for subsidy. Those monies have been released. The states are getting ×3, sometimes ×4 of the monies they used to get, including the local government. Honestly, they are awash with cash right now. None of the states are borrowing. In fact, they repaid 32% of their loans they paid down. In fact, this morning, we saw this morning that Nigeria has fully repaid its IMF legacy loans. Nigeria zero. I saw it there. You probably see it online. Nigeria has gone to zero in terms of. So we are basically rearing to go.
So these are lovely.
Yes.
With everything that's happening, with all the things, because I know you can't say all.
And
of
so
them.
now our issue now
so
is
how come?
How it needs to get to the people.
Exactly.
Percolating
because
to the people. That is the next stage now.
How come?
You cannot share what
that our
exist.
poverty got to 75.5%.
Well, you see,
in rural areas. And then in urban, and this is according to the World Bank, so it's not our enemies that are telling us.
I think we need data sovereignty.
Urban areas, 40%.
We need to have our own handle on our own data.
And then you talked about
the World Bank actually.
You don't agree with the World Bank data?
How many? No, I don't have to agree. I'm an economist, okay? I don't just take things on the surface.
The things that you said were the benefits of the Tinubu administration.
Has nothing to do with the World Bank.
Okay, but is the problem just the World Bank? You agree with the Fitch
ratings? I'm not saying about the World Bank, but I'm just saying that we don't have to take their numbers when we ourselves. I didn't list Fitch rating as an achievement. It's just one of those things that happened as a result of the repositioning of the balance sheet of Nigeria. We have to have our own data sovereignty. You can't just sit down and just wait for World Bank and say this is your future. No, World Bank cannot determine our future.
It would be very shocking to me that when the World Bank brings out figures that we don't have ours. Is that what you're saying?
We have ours.
So what is the poverty level? So what's the poverty level in Nigeria?
Let's go back to the MBS.
Yes.
From the last time I checked, the poverty level for the whole of Nigeria was about 35%, not 75%. Of course, there may be wars going on in the rural area, as I said. But I'm just saying that
because this was rural areas.
It's not the holy grail.
So poverty,
yes,
is that money that you don't like to hear? $2.15 a day.
Well, indeed, yes, but
because
again,
based on $2.15 a day, even our minimum wage,
but in the village,
even with our minimum wage, it means everyone is below the poverty line. Everyone that is on minimum wage,
so we are
is
moving from
beneath the poverty
30,000 naira to 70,000 naira.
At 70,000,
if there's cost,
they are living below the poverty
yes,
line.
and I agree with you. If you look at it from the $2.15, I think you ought to be getting to about 100 and something thousand, 110,000, 115,000 is the minimum. But in the village, you probably won't even have where to spend the money.
Let's talk about multi-dimensional poverty. You said many Nigerians don't understand.
They don't. They think
means.
Because the name is big, then it must be the worst thing that can happen. Let me tell you the worst poverty. If you went to the SDG, you see there. Food poverty,
yes,
number two. That's the most important.
But there are indices.
The poverty goes down. When you talk of multidimensional, they're not talking about access to school, access to
access,
which is good,
yes,
which is a good way. But I'm saying to you that the most important poverty to solve is food poverty.
Okay.
And we should concentrate on that. If we can do a lot more on agriculture, and I think we're doing a lot more on agriculture, producing the food we need, importing less of the food that we eat. For example, rice. I think there's a glut
important?
Now. There's wheat and so on.
Access to education, healthcare, better quality of life. These are the three indices for checking multi-dimensional poverty. Access is important. Health, education,
access is important.
And
but
quality
if you want to make
life.
a point, we're having an economic discussion. Me and you now, Kayla, we're having a strictly economic discussion,
yes, we are.
Which is worth between food and multidimensional. So let's cut out all the sensationalism and all of that. I'm not interested in that. I'm an economist. I'm having a discussion with you between food and multidimensional.
Yes.
And I'm saying I see it dropped often. Oh, Nigeria, 130 million people are multidimensional.
Because of access to education, access to healthcare, yes.
So let us break it down properly and understand that they are not dying as a result of that. It's not like, what will be most important to people is to be able to feed. Let's try and solve it step by step. And people should stop gaslighting government. Whether you like the faces of the people that are there or not, when you gaslight government, you make government make the wrong decision. They defeat your own purpose. If you really want a better country, let's focus government on what is important. Food poverty is important. The idea behind multidimensional, which needs to be redone anyway, because now every government across the state and the federal, they will build more schools every year. They build more health centers every year. In fact, I met someone whose NGO is actually repairing and retooling 260 primary health centers around the country, but started mostly in the north and then going towards the south. Recently, I met that person recently. If you put what they have done into cognizance, you realize that in those communities where they have actually helped them to rebuild all those PHCs, the multidimensional would have dropped.
Let's talk about the biggest elephant in the room of the Tinubu administration, which is the removal of fuel subsidy and floating of our naira. Now, it's been explained. We all kind of understood it, expected it even, But the issue is, of course, they were supposed to make more money. Government was supposed to make money, which they did. Allocations increased. State governments made more money. But you see, that policy, and this is just from my little knowledge of economics, that policy works when the money, plenty of money, goes back.
Yes.
Into.
That's where we are now. It must go back.
Is it going back?
It must go back. The next thing now is it must drill down. Mr. President is speaking to them. The states must deal. You know why? Because that's what it's for. First of all, start from the basics. Pay your people's salary. Pay pensioners, gratuities. Put money in people's pockets. The inflation is not the big issue. People must survive. First of all, before you start to think about, if I pay them, there'll be inflation. Pay them first, because it's about survival, right? You know what I'm saying? So when they can do that, and they can also pay according to the law or minimum wage, so that people have more money in their pocket, because inflation has eroded the value of the money. That's the thing. Then you can see that 2 days ago, one of the policies that was enacted at the Federal Executive Council meeting was about buy local.
The Nigeria
and not
first
only
policy.
buy local, exactly. Part of it is use local contractors. They said, look, there has to be a list of reliable contractors that are local contractors.
These are the things going to fight
all
our
of those
inflation
small
figures.
roads that in the villages and all of that, give a local contractor
Is this going to
that will
fight
spend
this
this
high
money.
inflation figure?
Well,
Is it
no,
going
the
to bring
issue,
it down?
first of all, we're talking of poverty, right? We're talking
Yes.
about poverty. We're talking about survival. Inflation will be dealt with in its own way. So we want to deal with inflation. You look at the key drivers of inflation. If we can produce more food is a key driver. In Nigeria, if we can produce more food and reduce food inflation, inflation will go down. If we look at core inflation, take food and energy prices away, look at the other things like transportation. If the same governors with so much money, some of them have different transportation schemes for their people, where people can move around with less money and all of that, things like transportation and some of the other things that people spend money on, then the prices will go down in general. The point being that inflation never goes up forever. It will go up, it's a cycle. It has to come down at some point, naturally forces, with natural forces and a bit of tweaking here and there, inflation will come down in Nigeria.
We have to wrap up there, Dr. Tope Fasua. I want to thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks
for making out the time
me.
to be with us on Hard Copy, and good luck with all the work you have ahead of you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That's Hard Copy this week. I'm Kayla Magwa. Good night.